So a friend of mine asked me to walk her through how I actually design games. Not the finished thing, the messy middle, the thinking. So that's what this is. I'm going to use my current project as an example. It's a dungeon crawler called the Eternal Ascent. But honestly, the dungeon is just a delivery vehicle. The real thing, the thing I've had stuck in my head for years, is one specific system. A skill system where you never pick a skill off a menu. You develop skills by doing things. Get hit by fire enough times, you start to resist fire. Swing a sword enough, you get better with swords. The skills emerge out of how you actually play. If you read the isekai manga where the main character is a spider, that idea, where you just become something through survival, that's the seed. That's the dream. Here's how I got from I want that to exist to I have a plan I can actually build. It started as homework. Quick honesty up front. This didn't start as a passion project. It started as a class assignment. I had to write an elevator pitch for a game. My dream game is enormous. It's basically what if Kenshi and Mountain Blade had a fantasy baby with a skill system. Open world, deeply simulated. You get dropped in and you choose your own direction. You cannot pitch that in an elevator, and you definitely can't build it as a student. So the first real design problem wasn't the game, it was shrinking the game. How to take this giant open world dream and carve out off the smallest possible piece that still teaches me how to build the part I actually care about. This is where I started working with an AI as a partner. I used Claude, and I want to be precise about what that means because I used AI can mean 100 things, and most of them aren't what I did. I didn't ask it to design my game. I asked it to interrogate me. I said, "Here's my dream game. Here's the constraints that the first one has to Here's the constraints that the first one has to be tiny. Now ask me every question you need to ask me so I can figure out what the first game actually is." And it just did. Question after question. That's the vibe of the world. What's the vibe of the world? Fantasy. How big is tiny? Just a dungeon, small enough I can build it fast. What perspective? Third person, maybe top down? How does combat work? Real time, manual dodging and blocking. And then the one that actually mattered, what's the single system you most want to deeply learn to build? I didn't even hesitate. The skill progression system. That's the whole reason the game exists. That question did something useful. It split the game into the things I'm here to learn and everything else that's just here to support it. The dungeon, the combat, the enemies, those are scaffolding. The skill system is the point. We kept going. No classes, pure skill emergence, skills in combat, magic, and non-combat stuff like stealth and lockpicking. I was ambitious. Magic emerges through exposure and discovery. You die, you drop everything, but you keep your skills. Permadeath, but the character carries the growth forward, like the Death and Return anime. And the story? Barely there. I just need a reason I'm in the dungeon, nothing more. At the end of that conversation, I had a real game design document. It had a name, The Eternal Descent, an overview, a core loop, skill system, combat, magic, the works. The professor also wanted a budget and reference images, so we sorted that too. Solo developer, 3-month timeline, about a $500 budget. Reference games, Mountain Blade, and Kenshi. And here's the thing, that document was a first draft of my thinking. It wasn't done. For the final project, the professor wanted a more professional design document. I used that as an excuse to push the idea further. And here's a trick I recommend to anyone. I took that document and I deliberately handed it to a different AI, a different model with a different personality. I told it, based on everything here, build me a professional game design document. Ask me any question first. Anything you're not confident about, put it in parentheses so I can come back to it later. I did that on purpose. I wanted a second perspective that would challenge the first one's work. It came back with a pile of stuff. Some of it genuinely sharp, some of it just noise it had borrowed from my reference game and pattern matched onto my project. Damn, Claude. It's talking about Gemini here. And that's the real skill, honestly. It's not generating ideas. Anyone can generate ideas. The tools made that free. The skill is filtering, taking in a bunch of noisy channels and pulling out the gold. Then I went through that document with it section by section, line by line, making every part more detailed and throwing out that what didn't fit. Then I came back to Claude for pre-production. I gave it both documents, the old ones and the new ones, and said, be my partner on this. We're in pre-production. What do we need to think about before we start building? And the first thing it gave me was a scope reality check. And it was right. Because here's what happens with a project like this. You get excited, and the excited version of the game has full physics-based damage and procedurally generated dungeon floors and a magic system that emerges organically from play. And for a 3-month solo prototype, every one of those is a trap. Physics damage on a prototype, too much, maybe. Full procedural generation, definitely too much. A truly emergent magic system, so maybe later. None of those are bad ideas. They're just not first game ideas. Knowing the difference is most of the job. Which brings me to the single most important thing I did. And it's going to sound like nothing. I didn't open the game engine. Not for a week. Something like 20 hours of pre-production, and almost none of it was building. It was talking, drawing, arguing, thinking. That's deliberate. When you're excited about a project, the instinct to jump into the engine and start making things making things feel because making things feels productive. But here's the trap. In a complex system, the earliest decisions are the ones you can't undo. If I build the system wrong, the skill system wrong, I don't find out for 3 months. And by then, everything else is wired into it. The cheapest possible moment to fix a mistake is before the mistake exists. So I spent pre-production designing the shape of the thing, not the furniture, the empty room, but a room measured correctly for everything I'd eventually want to put in it. And the pre-production produced one clear principle. So let me actually give you the design idea. The hardest problem in a system like this is that everything wants to talk to everything. Combat needs to tell the skill system about hits. The skill system needs to modify combat. The UI needs to know about both. If you wire all of that up directly, this part calls that part calls the other part, you get a web. Pull one thread, the whole thing tangles. Add one new skill, you're editing 5 systems. So we built it on the opposite principle. Every other part of the system knows as little as possible about every other part. The way I think about it is a newspaper. My game systems are reporters. When something happens, a hit lands, the combat system files a story. It broadcasts a structure event into the world. This much damage, this type, from this weapon, at this range. Then it's done. It does not know and does not care who's reading the paper. The skill system is the reader. It subscribes to the stories it cares about and ignores the rest. It never talks back to the combat. It just listens, accumulates, and quietly changes the world through values that other systems come and ask for when they need them. Reporters don't know their readers, readers don't know their reporters. The only thing that shares is the format of the story. And that's the whole trick. Because now, when I want to add a 50th skill or a 500th, I don't touch the combat system. I don't touch anything. I write, I write one new reader that listens for events that are already being broadcast. The system is built to grow without being rebuilt. That's what I mean by designing the empty room. I don't have 500 skills, I have 4. But the architecture can hold 500 because I designed the vocabulary. The language system speaks to each other before I designed any single skill. And the skill system that sits on top of that is the part I actually care about. No skill tree. Skills unlocked through hidden counters, probability, and specific events. More meaningful actions give more progress than trivial ones. Some skills only unlock in specific situations. Skills interact with each other and create new abilities and synergies. And, this part I love, the progression is mostly invisible. You don't watch a bar fill up. You're playing and then something unlocks, and the game feels like it noticed how you play. And one more thing on working with a partner. It goes both ways. At one point, the A wanted to split one of the core skills events into 2 separate events. I pushed back. I could see in my head exactly how players would exploit the 2 versions. They'd farm the easy half. So we kept it as one. 2 perspectives grinding against each other made a better answer than either of us had alone. have to be willing to overrule your partner, human or AI. Last piece. After all that design, the temptation is to go build the design. Don't. Most projects don't fail because of the idea bad. They fail because they try to build everything at once. So the final pre-production step was shrinking the game one more time, down to the smallest thing that you could possibly prove the concept works. For me, that's one room, one enemy, basic combat, one skill. It's a real shift in mindset. I'm not building the game yet. I'm building the proof that the game works. So if I had to compress the whole process into 3 lines, it's think before you build, because the early mistakes are the expensive ones. Find a partner, human or AI, and let them grind against your ideas, because friction makes better thinking. And don't be afraid to overrule them. Actually, I like AI better for this because humans have feelings. AI doesn't. So you can grind against AI and it won't take it personally, although it can be a little too nice. And finally, design the language before you design the content, because a good system isn't one that works, it's one that can grow.